Over 3,000 years ago, the societies of Bronze Age Europe were thriving from Ireland to Iberia and from Crete to Scandinavia. This was the era of Minoan palaces and Mycenaean warriors, of wealthy chieftains in southern Britain, and dynastic elites in fortified hilltop settlements in Spain. These distant cultures were all connected by a complex network of trade routes, exchanging all manner of raw materials and beautiful products. And one of the most important resources of the era was the fossilized resin we call amber. This red gold substance would become the gemstone that linked the cold northern shores with the sun-baked civilizations of the Mediterranean. Long before silk caravans crossed Asia or Roman merchants sailed the Indian Ocean, the warrior voyagers of Europe carried this precious cargo along rivers, over mountain passes, and across dangerous seas. These routes formed one of the earliest and most important networks of long-distance exchange. But when did this trade start? Why was amber so valuable? How far did Baltic amber travel? What goods and ideas flowed in return? And how did this trade transform these Bronze Age societies? This is a story of adventure and epic voyages about one of history's most important international connections, the Amber Road. When Bronze Age traders travelled into foreign lands, like Northern Europeans going south of the Alps, for example, as well as physical barriers, they would have had to deal with language barriers. I've been to Italy before. I spent 2 amazing weeks in Tuscany once, and I visited Rome, mainly for the incredible history, all the museums and ancient sites, and also for the food and the coffee. But I didn't see even a fraction of what Italy has to offer, and the next time I go, I need to be able to speak some basic Italian. And that's why this video is sponsored by Babbel. Babbel is one of the top language learning apps in the world, and it can help you start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. Last time I went to Rome, I went in winter, and although it was cozy to sit in the cafes drinking coffee, I'm spending this winter in the warm at home, learning Italian with Babbel. Buongiorno. Ready for a trip in warmer weather. You can learn in just 10 or 15 minutes a day, and these lessons are created by real language experts, so they prepare you to have practical conversations about travel, business, relationships, and so on. Most importantly, how to ask for coffee and beer and to pay your bill.
Un caffè latte.
So if you're planning on travelling soon, whether for business or leisure,
Un caffè.
or if you just want to learn something new, then you should try Babbel. And you can get up to 55% off your subscription by using the link in the description or by using the QR code on screen. Thank you very much to Babbel for sponsoring the video. Amber is not a mineral, but a fossilized resin produced by ancient conifer forests. It can be found in deposits all over the world, but the most famous deposits lie along the South Baltic coast. This is because the deposits are eroded by the sea and amber floats in salt water, so it washes up on certain beaches where it can be collected. Some of the richest sources are also found on the western side of the Jutland Peninsula down to the Frisian coast. It was recognised as a special substance even back in the Paleolithic. But it's when the glaciers retreated in the early Holocene that the Mesolithic hunter-gatherers began crafting small amber ornaments like beads, pendants, and wonderful animal figurines. You can see why they liked it. Baltic amber has a range of warm colours from yellow to red. Its translucence seems to capture and transform sunlight and firelight. It can be carved and takes a high polish. And when you rub it, amber can take a charge of static electricity. In fact, our word electricity comes from the Greek word for amber, electron. It was used by the 16th century English natural philosopher and physician to Queen Elizabeth, William Gilbert, who was from Colchester in Essex. He used the Neo-Latin term electricus to mean the electrostatic properties of amber. Anyway, the ancient exchange of amber goes back all the way at least as far as the Neolithic. Along with the introduction of farming across Europe came more complex social structures. They built longhouses and settlements, developed monuments and ritual landscapes, and they established long-range exchange networks. Neolithic societies traded exotic materials like spondylus shells and obsidian, and famously jadeite axes from the Alps, which were transported across Europe from Ireland to the Black Sea. Imported materials like this could have practical uses, like obsidian making excellent tools, and so could have value because it was better than what could be obtained locally, but also the exotic nature of it could be the point. A rare and beautiful, mysterious substance from unknown distant lands made it inherently special. Or a known geographical origin could bring its own meaning, like Aegean spondylar shells in the Neolithic Balkans and Central Europe, perhaps expressing ancestral connections. And exchanging these kinds of materials had social impacts. Giving and receiving exotic goods forged and maintained relationships between neighbouring groups, but also established and reinforced hierarchies within societies. Control of resource extraction and exchange by elites included trade in exotic goods and prestige items. Amber beads and pendants have been discovered in various Neolithic tombs, whose organic chemistry matches Baltic succinite. Most commonly, as you would expect in the tombs around the Baltic, from the funnel beaker culture, but also much further afield, such as the Baltic amber bead from Iberia, dating to around 3500 BC, which is found in a ritual cave with human remains. Metallurgy in Europe dates to before 5500 BC, and many Chalcolithic societies, from the Balkans to Iberia, developed complex societies with elites related to copper extraction and trade. But it's really in the Bronze Age, from 3000 BC and especially after 2000 BC, when long-range trade routes become really established. Societies became more hierarchical, long-distance alliances more formalised, and access to rare materials like copper, tin, gold and amber became critical for elite identity. In the Unatice culture, Baltic amber in the form of beads was an important element of personal ornament for elite women. At one burial site in Bohemia, dating to 2200 to 1700 BC, amber necklaces have been found in over 40% of excavated female graves. Amber bead necklaces, alongside gold and bronze jewellery, were wealth itself and were a means to display that wealth. They were such a cultural and social signifier that they were included in the burial costume and grave goods of this society. The Unatice culture maintained trade links across Europe, importing gold from Britain and exporting copper to southern Scandinavia. It was a central part of the trade network connecting the Balkans to Iberia. And a contemporary burial in southern Britain shows the importance of amber to the elites there too. Dating to about 1800 BC, the amber necklace was found with the cremated remains of a woman in a barrow at Upton Lovell, near Stonehenge. The necklace was made of around 1,000 amber beads, but now just over 300 survive. The beads were strung in 9 rows, each row held by a rectangular spacer plate. Necklaces using flat spacer plates have been found in Bronze Age female burials across Europe, from Orkney to Mycenaean Greece. It's likely that many of these beads and spacer plates were made in the Baltic region and exported. But there are also examples of similar spacer plate necklaces made from Whitby jet, found on the Yorkshire coast. This perhaps suggests that this style of necklace was also made in Britain too, using local materials, and amber does also wash up on British coasts. And for a long time, archaeologists debated the true source of amber found in Mediterranean and Central European contexts. But in the last few decades, scientific methods have shown that most Bronze Age amber tested as far afield as Italy, Greece, and even the Near East was indeed Baltic amber, also known as succinite. So, by what routes did it get there? What were the actual amber roads? One road followed the Elbe River from its mouth at the root of the Jutland Peninsula. A branch followed the Zala and another the Vltava, from which you can cross into the Danube system by its tributaries. The Danube, of course, opens up access both eastwards and westwards. Going west led to the Alpine roads via the Inn Valley. This is an ancient route from Innsbruck through the Brenner Pass or other passes to the Adige River, which flows to the Adriatic. From the upper Adriatic, the sea route leads to Mycenaean Greece, where we see prominent finds of amber. Another route from the Baltic Sea, and one of the most important, was by the Oder River, which leads right into Central Europe. From the head of the Oder, crossing to the Morava River, again leads to the Danube. The Danube, of course, leads to the Black Sea. Another more easterly route from the Baltic connected the Vistula to the Dnieper, and from there to the Black Sea. The mouth of the Oder is across the sea from Scania, a key and wealthy region for the Nordic Bronze Age societies. The Oder trade route was an important route for the spread of culture between the Carpathians, Central Europe, and South Scandinavia. Over in the west, a route followed the Rhine to alpine passes into the Po Valley, or into the western Mediterranean by the Rhone Valley. Alternatively, they could cross from the Upper Rhine to the Upper Danube Valley. Now, we don't know how far individuals went with their cargo. It's thought these goods travelled in many stages, with one group voyaging into their neighbouring lands, and then different people carrying out their own voyages, taking their own goods into the lands of their neighbours, and so on. But each of these stages would have been enormous and dangerous undertakings. Travelling from, say, South Sweden across the Baltic and into Germany or Bohemia was hundreds of miles, often paddling upstream. It could have taken weeks or months for a round trip. It looks like the amber roads reached southern Germany earlier in the Bronze Age, but the roads over the Alps and into Italy and the Mediterranean were only opened for the amber trade after about 1700 BC. Settlements in key regions grew in response to this trade. There are fortified sites from the era around the Alps and in northern Italy where finished beads and unworked amber have been uncovered. One of the most striking sites on the Amber Road is Moncadonia over in Croatian Istria. This was a fortified settlement forging a link between the Minoan Mycenaean world and that of Central Europe between about 1600 and 1300 BC. Maybe 1,000 people lived here. Sites like this really set off your imagination. You can't help but imagine what it would have been like to be a traveller approaching the hill from the coast, passing through one of the powerful gates. Maybe inside these walls, in 1500 BC, people from Central Europe met people from the Aegean and exchanged goods and exchanged stories and ideas. In the Mediterranean, Baltic amber has been found in Mycenaean shaft graves at sites like Mycenae and Tiryns. From the Mycenaeans and Minoans, Baltic amber was traded on to the civilizations of the Near East. An incredible small amber cup in the shape of a lion's head was found at Katna in Syria in a royal tomb dating to around 1340 BC, along with amber beads and glass beads. The amber for the lion cup was probably imported as a large unworked piece and then carved locally. There's also amber found in Egypt, and during the reign of Thutmose III, tomb inscriptions report the delivery of a huge cargo of amber delivered by Minoans. These trading voyages were often organised as great gift exchanges between rulers, and exotic foreign goods, like blue glass beads from Egypt and Mesopotamia for example, were also brought back to the Aegean and beyond. There were also 14 amber beads uncovered in the Uluburun shipwreck off the south coast of Anatolia. It's not known whether they were cargo or were part of the personal ornamentation of the armed Mycenaeans on board ship when it sank. It's possible these men were the warrior traders in charge of carrying out trading voyages in the Bronze Age. Because this was a dangerous world. Most people in the Bronze Age world were tied to the land and were dedicated to producing food, creating products, or serving elites. These kinds of voyages, by river, land, and sea, were carried out by the elite class of warriors. They had to potentially defend themselves and their precious cargoes from attack by bandits and pirates. Safe passage through the lands of their neighbours could only be agreed by personal oaths and political agreements. Travellers must have been given food, drink and shelter by their hosts, along with promises of protection. Political agreements were probably solidified by marriages, among other things. We see this, for example, in the burials in Denmark of women from Central Europe. Reciprocal personal oaths were likely sealed by gift exchanges, commonly in the form of weapons and armour that symbolised peace, or at least a truce, and also in the form of drinking vessels, symbolising the consumption of alcohol that formed a crucial part of the oath exchanges. One of the most spectacular Bronze Age drinking vessels is the Hove amber cup, found in a burial on the south coast of Britain, dating to between about 1750 to 1550 BC. Perhaps given by a Nordic Bronze Age chief directly, or through a series of gift exchanges to a British Bronze Age chief, in an era when British tin and copper was being exported to the continent. This travelling of people and goods in gift exchanges is seen in the personal ornaments and weapon types, like octagonal hilted swords, spreading along certain amber road routes. Goods like amber in the form of beads or finished necklaces spread in this way, as well as in the form of consignments of cargo. Travelling the other way along the same routes were goods like blue glass beads from Egypt and Mesopotamia, which have been found in Nordic Bronze Age burials. There are also personal items like folding stools, seen from Egypt to the Aegean to Scandinavia, associated with elite culture. It might be the warrior traders from the Oder to the Nile carried these with them in their boats and unfolded them for negotiations and for ritual drinking, while lesser men sat on the ground. All along these many routes, the elites engaging in the trade and gift exchanges were also producing and exporting their own goods. These centuries of trade facilitating the growing wealth and power of these elites and the societies they ruled over. The amber roads also enabled unprecedented cultural contacts, so we see certain commonalities in the warrior trader elites across all these distant and separate societies. And the amber trade was so lucrative for the Nordic Bronze Age elites that it enabled them to import all their wool, all their gold, and all their copper and tin. They also enticed metalworkers from Central Europe to set up workshops making bronze swords with Nordic-style decorative motifs. The huge demand for amber helped make this distant land rich. Amber continued to be a special substance into the late Bronze Age, where it was associated with the solar cult across Europe. Its association with the sun, and therefore with death, is perhaps one reason why it was so often included in burial goods. But the amber would not flow like this forever. Along with other luxuries like ivory, glass and faience, amber was a prestige good, circulating among the palace centres of the Eastern Mediterranean until the coming of the late Bronze Age collapse. A series of climatic changes, earthquakes, perhaps plagues and migrations disrupted the Bronze Age system after about 1200 BC. Long-range trade routes broke down, and many societies that depended on them crumbled. Some people, perhaps impoverished by the events, followed the ancient trade routes in migrations, raids, and conquests. The amber trade didn't stop, but with the Dark Ages and the Iron Age, the Bronze Age trade system had come to an end. But the centuries it lasted, say its peak was between about 1700 to 1200 BC, must have been the most incredible time. A time of almost unbelievable adventures and epic voyages by river, land and sea, and a time of a vast network of personal and political connections tying together almost every part of Europe. Some great places to read about this are the book The Rise of Bronze Age Society by Kristiansen and Larsen, and the book Trade Before Civilization, which has chapters on Bronze Age trade and one specifically on the Amber Road. As always, some of the articles and books I read for this video will be in the video description. Thank you very much indeed to my patrons and channel members for supporting my work. To find out more about Europe's Bronze Age warrior elites and why they liked shaving so much, please watch this video now. Thank you for watching.